When HOA President Linda Morrison calls Judge Judy a witch in open court, the entire courtroom gasps. What happens in the next 36 seconds leaves her trembling, her $80,000-year position destroyed, and sends shockwaves through everyone watching. This wasn't just an insult. This was career suicide wrapped in arrogance. Is this contempt of court? A complete mental breakdown? Or something far more devastating that ends with Karen on her knees, literally begging for mercy? Don't click away, you won't believe how Judge Judy dismantles this woman's entire life in under 60 seconds. Exposing secrets that nobody saw coming. Make sure you watch until the very end, because what Judge Judy reveals will leave you speechless. It started like any other case in Judge Judy's courtroom. The bailiff stood at attention. Cameras rolled. The audience watched silently, waiting for justice. On one side sat the plaintiff, 68-year-old Margaret Chen, a retired nurse and widow who'd lived in her modest home for 22 years. Her crime? She painted her mailbox navy blue instead of HOA-approved black. The fine? A staggering $15,000. Nobody expected what was about to happen. Linda Morrison, the HOA president, strutted into the courtroom like she owned it. Designer Chanel suit, diamond earrings that could pay Margaret's fine twice over. A condescending smile plastered across her face. She didn't just sit down, she posed. All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Judy entered, her presence immediately commanding respect. The questioning began. Simple, direct, but then Karen interrupted. Actually, Your Honor, if I may. Judge Judy's hand went up. The air in the courtroom shifted. You could feel it. Karen, oblivious, made another entitled comment about maintaining property values while rolling her eyes. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed into slits. Her jaw tightened. That's when Karen made the biggest mistake of her life. She opened her mouth again. Karen, frustrated by Judge Judy's relentless questioning, finally snapped. Oh please, you're acting like some kind of witch. The entire courtroom went silent. Every person froze. The bailiff's hand instinctively moved toward his side. Margaret's jaw dropped. Even the cameramen stopped adjusting their equipment. Time itself seemed to pause. Judge Judy slowly removed her glasses. She set them down on the bench with deliberate precision. The sound of them touching wood echoed through the dead silence. For 36 seconds, Judge Judy said nothing. She just stared directly at Karen, unblinking. Karen's smug smile began to fade. The color drained from her face like water from a broken dam. Her hands gripped the table. She suddenly realized what she'd done. Excuse me. Judge Judy's voice was calm. To calm lethal, Karen stammered. I didn't mean. Oh, you meant it. Judge Judy leaned forward. Let me explain something to you, Ms. Morrison. You walk into my courtroom wearing your designer suit, bullying a 68-year-old woman over mailbox paint, and you have the audacity to call me a witch. Silence fell like a hammer. Let's talk about your behavior, Judge Judy continued. She pulled out a document. You violated Section 12 of your own HOA bylaw. You collected $15,000 from Mrs. Chen. But where's the receipt? Where's the proof this money went to HOA funds? Karen's confidence evaporated. I have records. No, you don't. Judge Judy slammed another paper down. Because this shows you deposited that money into your personal account. Karen trembled. Tears formed in her eyes. Her voice cracked. Your Honor, I can explain. The room collectively held its breath. Every word from Judge Judy was a surgical strike, and the storm had only just begun. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. Not even close. She reached beneath her bench and pulled out a thick manila folder. The sound of paper rustling filled the silent courtroom. She extracted the first document and held it up. HOA financial records. 2 years' worth. Do you recognize this? Judge Judy slammed it onto the desk. The impact made Karen flinch. Karen stammered, her voice shaking. Those are private. Answer the question. Judge Judy's voice cracked like a whip. Karen nodded weakly. Yes, good judge, Judy said, flipping through pages marked with yellow highlighter. Because according to these records, you raised HOA fees by 400% in just 2 years. From $50 a month to $250 a month. Care to explain why? Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Judge Judy continued. And here's what's interesting. All that extra money, it didn't go to landscaping. It didn't go to security. It went to something called Morrison Consulting Services. She looked up. That's your company, isn't it? The plaintiff, Margaret, leaned forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. Your Honor, I paid those fees, Margaret whispered. We all did. Judge Judy pulled out a second document. This one was longer. Multiple pages stapled together. This is a list of 47 families you've fined in the past year alone. She began reading. Grass too long. Mailbox wrong color. Christmas lights up past January 2nd. A basketball hoop in a driveway. Her voice dripped with contempt. Every single violation, trivial. Every single fine, thousands of dollars. She looked directly at Karen, and every family who challenged these fines received a letter threatening foreclosure. From you. Karen's weak defense came out in a whisper. I was following the rules. Judge Judy's response was immediate and devastating. Whose rules? The ones you wrote. The courtroom collectively inhaled. Judge Judy wasn't done. She pulled out a third document. Email printouts. Let me read you something, Mrs. Morrison. This is an email you sent to your HOA board 3 months ago. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and read aloud. Margaret Chen has been a problem resident for years. We need to make an example of her. Find a NY violation and hit her with the maximum fine. If she can't pay, we move to foreclose and sell the property. I already have a buyer lined up. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Margaret burst into tears, not tears of sadness, but relief. Vindication? Karen's hands trembled violently. Sweat beaded on her forehead, running down her temples. She tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Judge Judy held up one finger. I'm not done. She leaned back in her chair, eyes boring into Karen. You don't even live in this HOA community, do you? Karen's face went white. Stone cold white? You live 15 miles away in a gated community. You're not even a resident. You're just the president of an HOA board you control so you can extort money from hardworking families. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. The bailiff had to gesture for quiet. Karen's entire body shook. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. Brick by brick, lie by lie. Karen's voice cracked like shattered glass. Your Honor, please. Judge Judy held up her hand. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. You called me a witch, Judge Judy said, her voice ice cold. Now you want mercy. Karen's face crumpled. The dam broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks, cutting through her foundation, leaving mascara trails like battle scars. Her whole body began to shake. I'm sorry, she choked out between sobs. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I've been under so much pressure. Please, Your Honor, please. Her voice rose to a desperate pitch. I have a reputation to protect. I have a career. I have listen for it. Judge Judy's expression didn't soften, not even slightly. You should have thought about that 36 seconds ago. The words landed like a death sentence. Karen gripped the table in front of her, knuckles white, as if holding on would somehow save her from what was coming. Judge Judy sat back in her chair, fingers steepled. The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Let me tell you what's going to happen now, Judge Judy began. Her voice was measured, controlled, devastating. Judgment for the plaintiff, Margaret Chen. Margaret gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Ms. Morrison, you will return the full $15,000 you illegally collected from Mrs. Chen. Immediately, Karen's head dropped. Additionally, Judge Judy continued, flipping through her notes, you will pay Mrs. Chen $25,000 in damages for emotional distress, harassment, and the deliberate infliction of suffering over a 3-year period. $40,000, Karen whispered, her voice hollow. I don't have you'll find it, Judge Judy snapped. Sell your designer handbags. Sell your jewelry. Sell whatever you need to sell. Because if you don't pay Mrs. Chen within 30 days, she has the right to place a lien on your property. Karen's eyes went wide with horror. Judge Judy wasn't done. You will also pay all court costs. That's another $5,000. She paused, letting the number sink in. $45,000 total, and that's just the beginning. Karen's breathing became rapid, panicked. Furthermore, Judge Judy said, her voice growing sharper, I am ordering a full investigation into the HOA board you control. Every financial transaction, every fine you've issued, every family you've targeted. The State Attorney General will be receiving a copy of all evidence presented here today, along with my personal recommendation that criminal charges be filed against you for fraud, embezzlement, and extortion. The courtroom collectively gasped. This wasn't just a civil judgment. This was criminal territory. Karen collapsed into her chair, her body folding like a marionette with cut strings. Her sobs grew louder, more desperate. Please, Your Honor, this will ruin me. My career, my reputation, everything I've built. Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes locked onto Karen's tear-stained face. Good. The single word echoed through the courtroom. Maybe next time you'll think before abusing your power. Maybe next time you'll remember that every person you bully, every family you threaten, every widow you try to steal from their real people with real lives. Karen tried to speak, but only incoherent sobs came out. Judge Judy picked up her gavel. Let me make something perfectly clear to you, Miss Morrison. You didn't just break the law, you broke trust. You took a position of responsibility and turned it into a weapon. You targeted vulnerable people because you thought you were untouchable. She paused. You were wrong. Karen's lawyer, who had been silent this entire time, finally stood up. Your Honor, my client is clearly distraught. Perhaps we could sit down, Judge Judy ordered. The lawyer sat. Judge Judy turned her attention back to Karen. You came into this courtroom thinking you were going to win, thinking your expensive suit and your fake smile would intimidate a 68-year-old woman who worked as a nurse for 40 years. A woman who saved lives while you were busy destroying them. Margaret was openly crying now, but these were tears of relief, of vindication, of justice finally being served. You thought you could bully her, Judge Judy continued. You thought you could bully him, and when I didn't bow to your entitled attitude, you called me a witch. Judge Judy's voice dropped to a near whisper, but somehow it filled every corner of the room. I've been called worse. But what I won't tolerate is someone who uses their power to hurt innocent people and then plays the victim when they get caught. Karen's entire body shook with sobs. Her designer suit was wrinkled. Her perfect hair was disheveled. The mask of confidence and superiority had been completely stripped away, revealing the scared, desperate woman beneath. "Your Honor," Karen managed to gasp out between sobs, "I'll lose everything." Judge Judy nodded slowly. "Yes, you will. Just like you tried to make Mrs. Chen lose everything. The difference is, she didn't deserve it. You do?" The gavel came down. Bang. The sound reverberated through the courtroom like thunder. "Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $40,000, plus court costs. The HOA board will be investigated by the State Attorney General. Ms. Morrison is hereby removed from her position as HOA president, effective immediately, pending criminal investigation." Another gavel strike. Bang. Case dismissed. "Get out of my courtroom." Karen couldn't even stand. The bailiff had to physically help her up from her chair. Her legs barely supported her weight. As she was escorted toward the exit, her sobs echoed off the walls. "Please," she kept saying. "Please, please, please, .. But there was no one left to plead to. Judge Judy had already turned to Margaret. The elderly woman stood slowly, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment, the two women just looked at each other. Judge Judy gave a small nod. Margaret mouthed two words. "Thank you." Judge Judy's stern expression softened, just for a second. A tiny smile flickered at the corner of her mouth, then it was gone. The bailiff escorted Karen through the courtroom doors. Her crying could still be heard even after the doors closed. And then, something remarkable happened. One person in the audience started clapping, then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire courtroom exploded in applause. People stood, they cheered. Some wiped tears from their own eyes. Margaret stood in the center of it all, hands clasped to her chest, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Judge Judy sat at her bench, watching the scene unfold, her face unreadable, but those who knew her well could see it in her eyes. Satisfaction. Justice had been served. Not the cold, procedural justice of paperwork and bureaucracy. Real justice. The kind that protects the vulnerable and holds the powerful accountable. The kind that reminds everyone watching that no matter how much money you have, no matter how important you think you are, you cannot abuse people without consequence. As the applause continued, Judge Judy picked up her papers and stood. She looked out over the courtroom one final time, gave a slight nod, and walked toward her chambers. The case was over, but the impact of what had just happened would echo far beyond these walls. If you're loving this instant justice, hit that like button and subscribe because we're breaking down what happened to F to R. The cameras stopped rolling. The fallout was even more devastating than you think, and you won't believe how far Karen's downfall actually went. Don't miss what comes next. But the story doesn't end there, not even close. Outside the courthouse, news cameras lined the steps like soldiers waiting for battle. Karen emerged from the building, her face buried in her hands, mascara-streaked tears still flowing. She tried to push past the reporters, but they swarmed like bees around honey. "Ms. Morrison, do you have any comment on the verdict? How do you respond to charges of embezzlement? Did you really call Judge Judy a witch?" Karen said nothing. She couldn't. Her lawyer tried to shield her, but the cameras caught everything. Every sob, every trembling step, every moment of her public humiliation. Meanwhile, Margaret Chen stood at the top of the courthouse steps, surrounded by a different kind of crowd. Supporters, fellow HOA victims, people whose lives had been touched by Karen's tyranny. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Chen, how do you feel right now?" Margaret's voice shook with emotion, but her words were clear. "Judge Judy gave me my life back. For 3 years I lived in fear. Fear of losing my home. Fear of this woman who had all the power. Today, that fear is gone." Her voice cracked. "Today, justice won." The interview went viral within hours. Within 24 hours, everything changed. The local news picked up the story first. HOA president exposed in courtroom meltdown. Read the headline on the evening broadcast. They showed clips of Karen calling Judge Judy a witch, followed by her complete breakdown. The anchors didn't hide their satisfaction. "Karma," one of them said with a smile, caught on camera. But local news was just the beginning. Someone in the courtroom audience had recorded the entire proceeding on their phone. They uploaded it to social media. The video exploded. 12 million views in 48 hours. Comments poured in by the thousands. "This is the justice we need. Judge Judy is a legend." Karen got exactly what she deserved. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that same night. All 7 members gathered in a conference room, the air thick with tension and panic. They'd seen the video. They'd read the comments. They knew what was coming. The vote to remove Karen as president was unanimous. 7-0. She wasn't even invited to defend herself. One board member leaked the meeting notes to the press. "We cannot and will not be associated with Ms. Morrison's actions. Effective immediately, she is removed from all HOA duties and her access to HOA funds is terminated." But the consequences didn't stop at removal. The State Attorney General's office launched a formal investigation into the HOA's finances. Within 72 hours of Judge Judy's order, forensic accountants combed through every transaction Karen had authorized over the past 5 years. what they found was staggering. Karen's consulting company had received over $380,000 from HOA funds. Services rendered, none. Invoices, fake receipts, fabricated. It was pure embezzlement, dressed up in corporate language. The 47 families who had been fined, threatened, and harassed didn't wait for the state investigation to conclude. They banded together and filed a massive class action lawsuit against Karen personally. The lawsuit sought $2.3 million in damages. Legal experts said they had an airtight case. Karen's personal life imploded just as quickly. She worked as a regional manager for a property management firm. Past tense. Her employer terminated her contract 48 hours after the video went viral. The company released a statement. "We do not condone the behavior displayed by Ms. Morrison and have severed all professional ties with her." Her reputation, carefully built over 15 years in property management, was destroyed overnight. LinkedIn connections disappeared. Professional organizations quietly removed her from membership lists. Former colleagues blocked her calls. She had become radioactive in her industry. And then came the criminal charges. The district attorney's office filed 3 felony counts: embezzlement, fraud, and extortion. If convicted on all counts, Karen faced up to 12 years in prison. The arraignment was scheduled for 3 weeks after the Judge Judy verdict. Meanwhile, Margaret's life transformed in the opposite direction. The $40,000 judgment was paid in full within 20 days. Karen liquidated assets, sold jewelry, and drained savings accounts to meet the court deadline. Margaret used part of the money to repaint her mailbox. Navy blue, exactly the color Karen had fined her for. The HOA held elections for new leadership. Every single board member who had enabled Karen's behavior was voted out. New representatives were elected people who actually lived in the community and cared about their neighbors. The new board's first action: they refunded every excessive fine Karen had issued over the past 3 years. Families received checks in the mail with a simple note: "We're sorry, this should never have happened." The community organized a celebration in the neighborhood park. Over 200 residents attended. Margaret was the guest of honor. People brought food, music filled the air, and children played on the lawn. It was the first time in years the community had gathered without fear or intimidation hanging over them. A courthouse bailiff who had worked with Judge Judy for 3 decades was interviewed by a legal podcast. His words said everything. "In 30 years, I have never seen Judge Judy that angry. Not that publicly angry, but it wasn't rage. It was righteous fury. She saw a bully picking on a vulnerable woman, and she wasn't going to let it stand. All because of one word. One moment of disrespect. One woman who thought she was above consequences." Karen learned the hardest lesson of her life. Power without accountability is just tyranny waiting to collapse. And when it collapses, it buries you under the weight of every person you stepped on to get to the top. So what can we learn from Karen's catastrophic mistake? Lesson number 1. Respect the judge. No matter how confident you feel, no matter how right you think you are, the moment you disrespect the court, you've already lost. Lesson number 2. Abuse of power never goes unpunished. You might get away with it for a while, but eventually, justice catches up. And when it does, the fall is brutal. Lesson number 3. 36 seconds can change your entire life. That's all it took. 36 seconds of silence after Karen called Judge Judy a witch, and her entire world crumbled. When Karen walked into that courtroom, she thought she was in control. She forgot she was standing before one of the toughest judges in America. Judge Judy's philosophy has always been simple. Justice isn't about being nice. It's about being fair. That day, justice was served. Today, Margaret Chen lives peacefully in her home, free from harassment, her mailbox proudly navy blue. Karen, she's still dealing with the consequences. Criminal trial pending. Reputation destroyed. Career over. This case became a viral sensation, reminding everyone that karma is real. And sometimes, karma wears a black robe. If this story of instant justice gave you chills, smash that subscribe button, and hit the bell so you never miss another epic courtroom takedown. Drop a comment below. What would you have said to Karen? And check out our next video where a landlord tries to scam a tenant and Judge Judy makes him pay triple. Thanks for watching. And remember, respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost everything. Justice served. Case closed.